The conference room smelled like stale coffee and old paper. I sat in the corner chair, the one nobody else wanted because it faced away from the window, and I kept my hands folded in my lap so no one could see them shaking. My mother didn't look at me once. She was busy smoothing the front of her blazer, leaning over to whisper something to my sister that made them both smile. My brother-in-law checked his watch. The attorney shuffled his papers. And I sat there in my corner chair thinking, just get through the next hour. Just breathe. My grandmother had died 11 days earlier. Peacefully, they said. In her sleep, I had driven 4 hours to be with her in those last weeks. Sleeping on her pull-out sofa, heating up soup she could barely taste anymore. Reading aloud to her from the mystery novels she loved even when she was too tired to follow the plot. She would squeeze my hand sometimes and say, "You're a good girl, Paige." Just that. Nothing more. But she said it like she meant it, and I held on to those 4 words the way you hold on to something small and solid when the ground underneath you doesn't feel stable. I'd been holding on to them for a long time by then. Growing up, I was the quiet one. Not the shy kind of quiet, the invisible kind. My sister was 3 years older, and everything about her was louder than me. Her laugh, her confidence, the way she walked into a room like she'd already been announced. My parents lit up around her. I don't mean that cruelly. It's just what I observed. The way you observe weather patterns or the way light falls differently on different surfaces. My sister was the surface they turned toward. I don't have a single memory of a birthday where my mother sat down next to me and asked what I wanted to do that day. But I have a clear memory, I was maybe 9, of my mother taking my sister to New York City for a long weekend because she'd gotten a small part in a school play. A school play. I stayed home with my aunt, who was kind, but distracted. And I told myself it didn't matter. Kids are good at telling themselves things don't matter. You get less good at it as you get older. My father traveled for work. When he was home, he was tired. He loved me, I think, in a general way, the way you love furniture. You've had a long time. It's there, it's fine. You don't think about it much. My grandmother was different. She lived 40 minutes from our house in a small ranch-style home she'd shared with my grandfather until he passed when I was 6. After that, she kept the garden going by herself. Tomatoes every summer, marigolds along the front walk, a lemon tree in a pot on the back porch that she babied through every winter. She taught me to make her biscuit recipe from memory. She showed me how to balance a checkbook before I was 12 because she said every woman should know where her money was. She asked me what I was reading, what I was thinking about, what I wanted to be. Nobody else asked me that. I became an accountant. My sister became, she would say, a creative entrepreneur, which meant she had cycled through 4 business ideas in 6 years, each one funded quietly by my parents. The boutique that lasted 8 months. The online jewelry line. The wellness coaching certification she got but never used. My parents never seemed to mind. They called it investing in her potential. I paid my own way through college, took out loans I finished paying off at 29, and built a career that was steady and unglamorous and entirely mine. My grandmother never made me feel like that was less than enough. She came to my college graduation. She sent me a card every year on my work anniversary. She'd written it in her calendar. I found out later. With a $20 bill tucked inside and a note that said something like, "Another year of doing the hard thing. I'm proud of you. $20. It was never about the money. It was that she remembered. The attorney cleared his throat. His name was Mr. Castellano, late 50s, reading glasses on a chain, the practiced calm of someone who had sat in rooms like this many times and had learned not to react to what happened inside them. He thanked us all for coming. He offered his condolences. He said he would now read the last will and testament of Dorothy Jean Harmon, my grandmother, dated 14 months prior. My mother sat up straighter. My sister uncrossed and recrossed her legs. The first items were simple. Personal belongings. The lemon tree on the back porch went to her neighbor, Mrs. O'Coffer, who had admired it for 20 years. A set of pearl earrings to a cousin I'd met twice. Her car, a 10-year-old Civic with 90,000 miles, to a woman from her church. Then Mr. Castellino set down the page he'd been reading and picked up a new one. The house, he said, and its contents, had been sold prior to her passing as part of an estate planning process she had undertaken with her financial advisor. The proceeds from that sale, along with her savings accounts, her investments, and 2 life insurance policies, he paused here just briefly, totaled approximately $1.4 million. My mother made a sound, not a word, just a sound, low and pleased, like the sound you make when something confirms what you already believed. Of that total, Mr. Castellano continued, $50,000 was designated as a gift to my sister. Her name, read aloud in that room, landed with a kind of thud. My sister reached over and gripped my mother's arm. The remaining amount after legal fees in a small charitable donation to the local library was to be held in trust and distributed to me. The room went very quiet. I looked at the table. I looked at the grain of the wood. I thought about the pull-out sofa and the soup and those 4 words, "You're a good girl, Paige," and I felt something start to move behind my sternum. Something I was not going to let out in this room. "That's," my mother started. "I'm not finished," Mr. Castellano said. Not unkindly, just firmly. He set down that page and picked up another. My grandmother, he explained, had also left a letter, a personal letter, to be read aloud at the conclusion of the will. He asked if everyone was prepared to hear it. Nobody said anything. He took that as a yes. He put on his reading glasses. "To my family," he read. "I have thought carefully about how to write this, and I have decided that the kindest thing I can do for all of you is to be honest." My sister's grip on my mother's arm tightened. I could see it from across the table. I am not a complicated woman. I kept a garden. I baked biscuits. I balanced my checkbook. And I paid my taxes, and I tried, for most of my life, to see people clearly. I have watched my family for many years. I have watched how you treat each other. I have watched what you prioritize and what you overlook, and who you make feel like they belong and who you let stand in the rain. My mother's chin lifted. That specific motion, I had seen it my whole life. It was the motion that preceded denial. "Paige," Mr. Bertillon. Castellano read, and my name in my grandmother's words. In that room was almost more than I could hold. "You drove 4 hours to make me soup? You slept on my uncomfortable sofa for 3 weeks, and you never once complained or made me feel like a burden. You read to me. You held my hand. You asked the doctors the questions I forgot to ask. You did all of this while working remotely, while managing your own life, while never asking for anything in return. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, everything." I pressed my thumbnail into my palm, a sharp little point of sensation to anchor me to the room. "To the rest of my family, I love you. I want to be clear about that. But love does not require me to pretend I have not seen what I have seen. Money given to those who have not learned to value what they already have does not help them. It delays the lesson. Paige has always known the value of things. I am trusting her with what I have worked for because I believe she will use it wisely, and because, if I am being fully honest, she is the only one I have ever been fully sure would come when I called." Mr. Castellano set the letter down. He folded it with the quiet precision of a man who understood the weight of paper. My mother stood up. What followed was not her finest moment. I won't detail it because it doesn't need to be detailed. The raised voice, the word unfair used several times, the suggestion that my grandmother had not been in her right mind. She had been in better shape mentally at 81 than most people I know. My sister cried, though I'm still not entirely certain what she was crying about. My brother-in-law said something about lawyers and contesting and rights, all of it vague and inflated and ultimately empty. I sat in my corner chair. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not say any of the things I had imagined saying in the various versions of this conversation I had rehearsed in my head over the years. The versions where I finally explained what it felt like, what all of it had cost me. The specific shape of the particular loneliness of growing up in a house where you knew, without anyone ever having to say it directly, that you were not the priority. I didn't say any of that, because my grandmother had already said it, and she had said it better than I ever could have. When the noise settled, Mr. Castellano handed me a sealed envelope. In addition to the letter, he said, my grandmother had left me something personal. A separate item, outside the formal estate documents. I opened it in my car. Inside was an index card, the kind she kept in a little box by the kitchen phone. Her handwriting, which had gotten smaller and shakier in the last few years, but was still unmistakably hers. It said, "The biscuit recipe is in the green tin on the second shelf. Don't let anyone tell you it needs more salt. It doesn't. Love, Graham." I sat in the parking lot of that attorney's office for a long time. The weeks after were complicated, in the way that grief is always complicated when it gets tangled up with money and family and old wounds that people thought were healed over but weren't. My mother called twice. The first call was an apology that wasn't quite an apology, more of an explanation, a reframing, a suggestion that perhaps my grandmother had been influenced. I listened. I didn't argue. I said I understood, which was true in the sense that I understood exactly what she was doing, even if I didn't agree with it. The second call was harder. She cried, real crying this time, and said she didn't understand where things had gone wrong between us and that she'd always wanted the best for me. Always. And I believe part of that. I think most people believe they're doing the right thing most of the time. That's what makes it so complicated. That's what makes it so hard to stay angry at your mother, even when you've earned the right to be. I said, "I know you did." And I meant that too, in my own way. I didn't cut anyone off. That felt important to me, not as a gift to them, but as something I was doing for myself, because I didn't want to carry that particular weight forward. I set new parameters. The way you reconfigure a budget that hasn't been working. Less frequent contact. Lower expectations. Cleaner boundaries. The kind of clarity that grief sometimes gives you if you're willing to accept the gift of it. What I did with my grandmother's money is not the most dramatic part of this story, but it matters to me. I paid off my car. I started a savings account I named after her. Nothing fancy, just a name I see when I log in. I put a portion into a fund for first-generation college students at the state school I attended because I remembered what it felt like to navigate all of that alone without anyone who'd done it before to show me the way. The rest I'm sitting with for now. She raised me to be careful with money. I'm trying to honor that. I went back to her house. The new owners had already moved in, so I just sat in my car for a few minutes outside, looking at the front walk. Someone had pulled out the marigolds. I don't know why that was the thing that finally made me cry, but it was. Not the will reading, not my mother's voice in that conference room, not even the index card. The marigolds. I let myself cry about the marigolds for a few minutes, and then I drove home. On my kitchen counter, I have a green tin on the second shelf. Inside it is a handwritten recipe for biscuits, 2 1/4 cups of flour, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, 3/4 teaspoon of salt. She underlined that, the exact right amount, and a note in the margin that says, "Don't overwork the dough." I make them on Sunday mornings sometimes. They're not perfect yet, but I'm getting there. I framed the index card. It's on my desk, next to my monitor, where I see it every day when I sit down to work. The biscuit recipe is one thing, but what she really left me in that card, in that tiny, shaky handwriting, was the last version of her voice I'll ever get. The last ordinary thing she said to me. I'm not ready to put that in a box yet. Maybe I never will be. Maybe that's okay. Maybe that's the whole point, that some things aren't meant to be filed away. Some things are meant to stay out where you can see them, small and solid, an anchor for the days when the ground doesn't feel stable. She knew. She always knew. And in the end, that was the only inheritance that ever mattered.